Penguin Random House Audio presents The Big Book of Sherlock Holmes Stories, edited and with an introduction by Otto Penzler. Read for you by Nicholas Guy Smith with Mark Bramhall, Gildart Jackson, Bruce Mann, Peter Altschuler, Matt Waterson, Steve West, Karen White, Katherine Kellgren. Introduction. Otto Penzler. About 100 years ago, Sherlock Holmes was described as one of the three most famous people who ever lived, the other two being Jesus Christ and Houdini. There are some who claim that he is a fictional character, but this notion is, of course, absurd. Every schoolchild knows what he looks like, what he does for a living, and most know many of his peculiar characteristics. The tall, slender, hawk-nosed figure, with his deerstalker hat and Inverness cape, is instantly recognizable in every corner of the world. In addition to the superb stories describing his adventures written by his friend, roommate, and chronicler, Dr. John H. Watson, with the assistance of his literary agent, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Holmes has been impersonated on the stage, television, radio, and in countless motion pictures. More than 25,000 books, stories, and articles have been written about him by famous authors, amateur writers, and scholars. This collection of Sherlock Holmes parodies and pastiches is the largest ever assembled. It contains serious pastiches by distinguished literary figures, equally good stories by less exalted Sherlockians, and some truly dreadful parodies included here for historical interest more than reading pleasure. They are mercifully brief. Inevitably, I have drawn on the work of others. The first and greatest anthology of its kind is The Misadventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1944, edited by Ellery Queen, a brilliant, pioneering anthologist whose best collections, 101 Years' Entertainment, The Great Detective Stories, 1841 to 1941, its sequel, To the Queen's Taste, 1946, The Female of the Species, 1943, and others are true cornerstones of detective fiction. Other scholars and aficionados who have unearthed material and whose books have provided access to rare and obscure material are Robert Adey, Richard Lancelyn Green, Charles Press, Marvin Kaye, and Mike Ashley. My deep affection for Holmes, now exceeding 50 years of reading, has resulted in the addition of stories to this massive tome that never before have been collected in a book devoted to the great detective. While I may not fully concur with Watson's assessment that Holmes is the best and wisest man whom I have ever known, an accolade reserved for a very few dear friends, he has been a trusted and worthy companion for the greatest percentage of my life. Sherlock, he was nearly named Sherrinford, was born on January 6, 1854, on the farmstead of Mycroft, the name of his older brother, in the North Riding of Yorkshire. He solved his first case, eventually titled The Gloria Scott, while a 20-year-old student at Oxford. Following graduation, he became the world's first consulting detective, a vocation he followed for 23 years. In January 1881, he was looking for someone to share his new quarters at 221B Baker Street, when a friend introduced him to Dr. John H. Watson. Before agreeing to share the apartment, the two men aired their respective shortcomings. Holmes confesses, "I get in the dumps at times and don't open my mouth for days on end." He also smokes a vile shag tobacco and conducts experiments with loathsome-smelling chemicals. He fails, however, to mention an affection for cocaine, although he ruefully notes his fondness for scratching away at the violin while in contemplation. He proves to be a virtuoso who can calm his roommate's raw nerves with a melodious air. Watson's admitted faults include the keeping of a bull pup, a strong objection to arguments because his nerves cannot stand them, a penchant for arising from bed at all sorts of ungodly hours, and an immense capacity for laziness. "I have another set of vices when I'm well," he says, "but those are the principal ones at present." They become friends, and Watson chronicles the deeds of his illustrious roommate, often to the displeasure of Holmes, who resents the melodramatic and sensational tales. He believes that the affairs, if told at all, should be put to the public as straightforward exercises in cold logic and deductive reasoning. Holmes possesses not only excellent deductive powers, but also a giant intellect. Anatomy, chemistry, mathematics, British law, and sensational literature are but a few areas of his vast sphere of knowledge, although he is admittedly not well versed in such subjects as astronomy, philosophy, and politics. He has published several distinguished works on erudite subjects: Upon the Distinction between the Ashes of the Various Tobaccos, A Study of the Influence of a Trade upon the Form of the Hand, Upon the Polyphonic Motets of Lassus, A Study of the Chaldean Roots in the Ancient Cornish Language, and his magnum opus, Practical Handbook of Bee Culture, with some observations upon the segregation of the queen. His 4-volume The Whole Art of Detection has not yet been published. When he needs information that his brain does not retain, he refers to a small, carefully selected library of reference works and a series of commonplace books. Since Holmes cares only about facts that aid his work, he ignores whatever he considers superfluous. He explains his theory of education thus: "I consider that a man's brain originally is like an empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber of every sort that he comes across, so that the knowledge which might be useful to him gets crowded out, or at best is jumbled up with a lot of other things, so that he has a difficulty in laying his hands upon it. It is a mistake to think that that little room has elastic walls and can distend to any extent. Depend upon it, there comes a time, for every addition of knowledge, you forget something you knew before." An athletic body complements Holmes' outstanding intelligence. He seems even taller than his 6 feet because he is extremely thin. His narrow, hooked nose and sharp, piercing eyes give him a hawk-like appearance. He often astonishes Watson with displays of strength and agility. He is a superb boxer, fencer, and single-stick player. He needs all his strength when he meets his nemesis, the ultimate arch-criminal Professor James Moriarty, in a struggle at the edge of the Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland. The evenly matched adversaries, locked in battle, fall over the cliff. Both were reported to be dead. All England mourned the passing of its great keeper of the law, but in 1894, after being missing for 3 years, Holmes returned. He had not been killed in the fall, after all, but had seen a good opportunity to fool his many enemies in the underworld. He had taken over the identity of a Danish explorer, Sigerson, and travelled to many parts of the world, including New Jersey, where he is believed to have had an affair with Irene Adler, who will always be the woman to Holmes, and to Tibet, where he learned the secret of long life from the Dalai Lama. When Miss Adler, the famous and beautiful opera singer Holmes first meets in A Scandal in Bohemia, died in 1903, Holmes retired to keep bees on the southern slopes of the Sussex Downs with his old housekeeper, Mrs. Martha Hudson. He came out of retirement briefly before World War I, but his life since then has been quiet. Holmes has outlived the people who have participated at various times in his adventures. In addition to Mycroft, Watson, Moriarty, Irene Adler, and Mrs. Hudson, the best-known auxiliary personalities in the stories include Billy the page boy, who occasionally announces visitors to 221B, Mary Morstan, who becomes Mrs. Watson, the Baker Street Irregulars, street urchins led by Wiggins, who scramble after information for Holmes's coins, Lestrade, an inept Scotland Yard inspector, Stanley Hopkins, a Scotland Yard man of greater ability, Gregson.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?